The Cruzière area in southern Cévennes, France, is home to an unusual concentration of Neolithic vestiges. No less than 60 dolmens can be found scattered in the bush in the vicinity of the municipality of Saint-André-de-Cruzière, along with numerous other remains of an obviously dense and protracted ancient occupation. A signal trail leads from Saint-André to an artifact known as the sacrificial stone, which indeed bears what could be mistaken as the hallmarks of such a practice, consisting of grooves etched in the surface,
purportedly designed to channel the blood.
However, there is no reason to believe that it's anything more than piled-up slabs grooved by rainwater erosion. More intriguing, and indeed downright mysterious, is a small fortified complex situated further down the meandering path on the brink of the Justarel Gully. The latter, being dry most of the time, was once used as the main accessway, but is now overgrown with bramble as the site is falling into oblivion. Some searches have been conducted in the area in the 70s, but I have found no mention of this particular most singular part of it anywhere. Not even at the nearby prehistoric museum of the Avon d'Orniac, which showcases some of the finds yielded by local searches. Right off the bat, the Justarel site stands out from the rest of those neighboring it. The bulwark is what catches the observer's eye at first glance. First off, whereas some of the other ruined settlements in the vicinity of that of the Justarel are surrounded by walls as well, those don't denote the martial nature of actual fortifications as this one displays. Then the sheer shape of it itself is unusual, with its pointed cross-section, unlike any I've ever seen. However, its most remarkable feature is the stunning little loopholes recessed in the bulwark. Two of them remain in what's left intact of the fortification, i.e. the northern portion, one at a corner, the other in the middle of the wall section. At first glance, what is most striking about them is the contrast between their archaic facture and their advanced conception from a strategic perspective. But a closer look at them reveals a flat-out jaw-dropping particularity: their sheer height. The guards standing in them couldn't have been taller than dwarves. So I'm now sitting in the loophole, and as you can see, it's just high enough for that. To my back is the loophole proper, meaning the hole they used to keep watch through. So they had been, sitting here all day and crooking their neck to 180 degrees to peek through the aperture. First of all, the vision angle is very, very narrow. You see pretty much nothing. And my take is that the only way to keep watching a loophole is to stand in it. So the aperture here is 1 meter and 20 centimeters, which is equivalent to 4 feet. Not including this flat stone that may or may not have been added later. I think it comes in handy to make the floor nice and flat, so I think it's original. Anyway. How do you expect anyone to shoot an arrow through that loophole here? The opening abuts the ceiling, so there's no room for a bow. And even if they had crossbows wouldn't fit in there. So what did they do? Did they, I don't know, insult their assailants?
What's eating you face headed funny breath bastards?
Spit at them? There's not even enough room to swing your arm in there to throw rocks at them. So maybe they had slingshots. Maybe they stole the elastics from their wife's panties to make slingshots. Where their elastics at the time? Did their wives wear panties? The truth is what's left when all the other possibilities are discounted, right? But my gut is that their mission, the guard's mission, was to give his folks a shout if you ever spotted something coming this way, and everybody ran for shelter. I guess we got to go look for those shelters, or what's left of them. The one above ground building, still standing in the middle of the site, displays similar mysterious and telling characteristics. Actually, it looks like it was the only above ground construction to have been ever built in the complex, but we'll get back to that. It consists of a small, 2 meters, 6 feet 6 across house neatly constructed of accurately piled rectangular shaped rectified stones, which no mortar was used to bind together. Judging by the rugged aspect of their surfaces, it looks like some kind of hammer and possibly chisel has been used to square the stones. I happened to stumble upon an iron nugget 30 feet away on a flight of stairs, so it could be that indeed the little people made iron tools. But I also found a beer bottle, mind you. Interested really? Any find that isn't backed up by at least stratigraphy must be taken with a grain of salt. The single opening is capped with a rectangular lintel, and the top of the wall is shaped to prop a long-gone slanted roof. The wall at the bottom of the slant is tilted inward, which indicates very advanced building skills. It was made so to counter lateral charge from a very heavy roof, probably made of very big overlapping flat stones that were probably looted since flat stones are an asset for builders of all epochs. My first impression was that the modernish style of the construction clashes with the archaic looks of the ramparts, but at any rate, the dimensions matched that of the loopholes. The mean height of the interior space would have been 1.5 meters, less than 5 feet, while the lintel is only 1.2 meters above ground. The cabin was built on a bedrock, and there is no earth around whose accumulation can be held accountable for the reduced height. The minute, incredibly sturdy masonry shows beyond doubt that this was made to last. This is no mere shepherd's hut you would crawl in to crash overnight, so you'd think the builders would have put in the amount of work necessary to make it at least convenient. So, if they went to such great length to make it sturdy and long-lasting, don't you think they would have made it to fit their sizes? And it's not like they were running out of construction material. One more interesting detail about this little construction is that there is no trace in the masonry of either hinges or locks. So why would they have built such a sturdy little building without equipping it with a door? Whatever this little bunker-like construction was designed for, whatever it was used for is anyone's guess. One thing is sure, it's too small to accommodate the whole community in case of assault. So we still have to find where they hid. I'm now standing inside the collapsed dolmen that is situated 1 meter north of the northern portion of the rampart. Not that I think that it had anything to do with the site. I think dolmens predate the site by a long shot. You see, megalithic construction techniques date back to a time when people possessed technologies that enabled them to lift and transport and stack multi-ton rocks like this one. And this technology was lost over time. And it's obviously way more economically and energetically efficient to implement such technology, if you possess it, than to assemble walls with stones that can be carried by a man alone. Now, one thing I know for sure about dolmens is that they weren't tombs. We've been told over and over again that they were sepulchres, and it turns out that they're not. I'm going to dedicate a whole video to that subject. I came across some sources which establish without the shadow of a doubt that dolmens were anything but. What's striking about it is its measurements. Whether its dwellers would lay in there dead or alive, they would have had to be less than a meter tall, because the layout of this dolmen is 1 meter across. It looks like that the little people have been around for a long period of time. Other than a little stone hut in a corner of the rampart, 0.9 meters, 3 feet high, this is all that remains of the village above ground. An exterior flight of stairs is still in place, designed to ascend a very mild slope that could very easily be walked up without them, which is indicative of some degree of sophistication in urbanism. Random-shaped terraces made of stone enclosures filled up with a mix of pebbles and soil must also be mentioned to pretty much wrap up the inventory of the ruins.
So, where did the little people find refuge in case of alert?
One more, perhaps the most telling of their fascinating attributes, deserves mentioning. The site has been carefully chosen by the constructors over a handful of criteria. The vicinity of the Justarel, today an intermittent but very likely once a permanent creek, certainly played a role, as well as the abundance of building material. But one amazing characteristic, and I believe feature, of the piece of land included within the fortification is that half of its surface consists of a spectacular lapis, a kind of rock formation that results from the solution of limestone by the CO2 naturally contained in rainwater. The grooves thus formed measure roughly 1.5 meters, 5 feet, up to 2 meters, over 6 feet 6 in average depth, and many of them are wide enough to allow for circulation of people of smaller stature. The most striking fact about those is not their interesting aspect in and of itself, but that such a far-flung stretch of them has been encompassed within the enclosure. The erection of a bulwark is a time-consuming undertaking, and whatever was built around would have been deemed commensurately valuable by the future dwellers. Just straddling them gives a sense of what hazardous a hindrance it represents. And indeed, such a formation could very well have served as a warren and provide secret hiding places and shelter from assailants too large to enter them. This could very well explain why the loopholes don't seem fit for the use of any kind of weapon. The guard's mission was to give the other members of the community a shout or a whistle, and just like gophers, they would instantly disappear on the ground. The ditches were most probably covered in stone slabs back in the day, since, in fact, some of them still are. Of course, the passageways would have had to be covered with stone slabs and probably hidden under gravel. Also, the passageways would have been too narrow for the assailants, assuming that they were of normal height, to chase the little people in there. One more clue arguing for that theory could be a series of flat stones seemingly embedded in the ground. So doesn't this here look like the entrance to a tunnel that's been backfilled? One piece of a stone slab, 2, 3, 4, and then the following ones disappear under a bed of rubble. And it looks like this whole area has been covered with rubble to hide some underground chamber. So could the aforementioned terraces actually serve as roofs for former subterranean chambers? Hard to tell until a legal excavation endeavor brings it to light. Situated a couple of kilometers from the Castillon hamlet, at the top of a hill and overlooking the Gagnère Valley, give or take 10 kilometers as the crow flies west of the Justarel complex, stands the so-called Castillon Castle. All the records that I found with regards to that construction behind me present it as the Castle of Castillon, implying that it's a one and unique building, whereas there's evidence that it's actually a Saracen tower that was built on top of older ruins. All you need to do to ascertain this is to compare the stones the respective buildings were made out of. On the one hand, you have slabs that were just broken into shape, whereas the stones that were used to build the castles, the castle proper, have been chiseled, as can be guessed by looking at their rugged surface, as if they had been rectified using some kind of tool. Just like the Justarel house, by the way. It was the earlier construction on the ruins of which the tower is erected that caught my attention, and particularly its apertures. Loopholes, what seems to have been a door and several arched assumed French doors, all below a meter in height.
And this is the only rectangular shaped opening in the whole construction, or what's left of it. Whereas all the other apertures are arched, and it's been blocked as well using the same stones that were used to build the tower. So my guess is that this was the main entrance to the fort, especially since it's oriented facing the access trail that I used to get here, but which is pretty much the only way. There are sheer bluffs on every other side, and as you can see, it's roughly a meter in height. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not even that. Maybe 90 centimeters in height. That's about less than 3 feet. All the other apertures in the construction are arched like this, and they're no bigger than this. And you find the same ones at the upper floor up there on the opposite wall. So to me, this confirms that those used to be windows, whereas the rectangular one, which is the only rectangular opening in the whole building, was the main entrance. And there's a breach. So you can see here that
the space in front of it was backfilled.
So after they blocked the windows and doors at ground level, they filled up the gap between this wall and the bottom of the tower all the way up to the top. So I just found the flagstones that made up the floor covering. The floor was maybe 3-4 inches beneath the level of the sill. Look at those recesses here. There's a whole series of them indicating that they used to be the housings for the long gone rafters that used to prop the beams on which the floor was set. So the top of the housings give you the height of the ceiling. So this is the real archer's loophole. And the archer would have had to stand in there. There's no two ways about it, in order to be able to shoot arrows through that narrow slit at the end of it. Otherwise, if he had been standing outside of it, his shooting angle would have been very, very poor, especially downward. And I didn't have to go very far to find a comparable. There's a loophole like this one in the tower, and the difference with this one is that one and a half meters. So those Saracens weren't very tall either, but still.
Just like the apertures at ground level, the windows of the upper floor have been blocked as well, but for a different reason. Here, it's been done in a way that the blockage is hardly noticeable from the outside, and its inner half consisting of slates, it can easily be removed when the assailants were defeated. Sadly, it never was.
So assuming that the survivors from the assault had scrambled into the hills behind me, which seems a very natural thing to do, they would have been headed due east. And so they would have been on a straight line to the Justarel. So who knows, maybe the little people who fled the assault of the castle founded the Justarel settlement. This could very well explain why there's a makeshift feel about the Justarel, especially if you compare it to this castle. This could explain, for instance, that the little house was built without the use of mortar to bind the stone. This could also explain the shift in strategy, opposing invincible assailants to hiding away in burrows.
So, are we looking at evidence that an ethnicity of little people once lived in the area? It definitely falls into the realm of possibility. Now, every time I mentioned this hypothesis, I got the same remark in return. But people were smaller back then. So I had to dig out some data, and it didn't take long to come up with a couple of charts. And it turns out that the mean height of males wasn't inferior to 165 centimeters or 5'5" at any given time since the Paleolithic. The lore has it that little people roamed the forests of the ancient world. Legends, you say? I believe there is a kernel of truth to them. I believe legends are no more and no less than records of actual facts, informed by both oral transmission and cultural repression. Obviously, neither did dwarves nor giants fit in academia's narrative.